It's another chilly morning by Lake Wendouree. Very thick clouds across the horizon. Very little chance of an interesting sunrise shot, I'm afraid. So we're just going to do the thing where we wait for the sun to come back so we can have a talk. Okay? Okay. I'm going to go have some breakfast. And I think I'm going to have a double coffee this morning, just to kick the engine a bit. And then we are going to have another talk about Ark Raiders, because I found out some very interesting information that backs up something that I've been saying for years now about how much console players suck as people compared to PC players. The glorious master race, as it were. So yeah, you're going to want to stick around for this. I imagine this one's going to trigger some interesting discussion in the comments. Keep it civil-ish. I mean, you console players can try to keep it civil, but we all know how aggressive and juvenile you are, and I'm going to prove it. Coffee first, though. So, we're going to talk about gamer behavior today. How you treat other gamers in multiplayer games. Now, I've mentioned recently that my personal preference for multiplayer games is PvE. Fallout 76 is a fantastic example of a PvE game I've spent many hundreds of hours in over the years. The various Monster Hunter games, World, Iceborne, Rise, Sunbreak, and of course Wilds. But when it comes to games like Ark Raiders, which I've made a recent video about wanting to play but being unable to just because of my personal circumstances here at the moment. So I'm getting a bit of FOMO on that, because on social media I keep seeing these videos of people having these wonderful little moments with other players and little team-ups and surprisingly chill, friendly environment for a game that includes PvP on all the time, even though it is PvPvE. So ideally, it's every player against, the bad robots. But over the past couple of days, I've been seeing something doing the rounds that has reinforced an opinion that I've had for many years now, and I've spoken about it a few times on streams and stuff. I don't tend to make a big deal about it or make a talking point, because it just tends to start arguments. But now we have some really interesting data, some proof, some evidence of this behavior, and it is console players are shittier people. They're shittier people to other people in games. Personal lives might be a different thing, but So let's have a chat about some numbers. So, quick switch to the GoPro, image quality drop, because I need to read some stuff off the phone. Now, this is from r/Ark Raiders on Reddit. I've seen this spreading around a fair bit over the last few days. And some dude, well, I presume dude, probably a dude, feels like a dude thing to do, this kind of thing. Anyway, some dude decided to run an experiment, a statistical probability experiment with a mate of his, and they posted the results on Reddit. So apparently him and his mate or whatever, who both play Ark Raiders, him on PC, his mate on PS5 Pro, decided to turn crossplay off, so they're only playing with people on their own respective platforms, to see what the kind of behavioral changes they see in the players and whether it was statistically significant, because I think they had a hunch about some stuff and things that were going on. We both put crossplay off, he starts. For a whole week we played solo and wrote down our rounds of Ark Raiders. We noted the time we played and all rounds. When meeting a player, we both agreed to lower our weapons and told them we wouldn't attack. So friendly, don't shoot, let's work together, that the robots are the real enemy, that kind of stuff. We'd explain that we're looking for items to upgrade benches, crafting benches, I presume. I haven't had a chance to play Ark Raiders. We've talked about that before in a previous video, but I presume that means upgrading crafting benches to make better stuff and things. That's the way things usually flow in these games. And suggested they relax, maybe even team up. So yeah, just friendly, chill out. I'm just looking for stuff. Just looking for loot to upgrade my stuff. No threat here. Let's work together, maybe. My brother plays on PlayStation 5 while I play on PC. My brother has more time to play and played a total of 84 rounds, on average of 12 rounds a day. He met other players in 79 of them. 79 of 84 rounds he met other players. In total, he met 237 players. From those 237 players, he had 42 players wishing him luck, 50 58 that lied and shot him in the back, 102 that shot him on sight, 7 nice ones that extracted together, 28 faked, teamed up, and then killed him at the extract. On PC, 51 rounds, an average of 7 rounds a day. I met other players in 49 of them. In total, I met 172 players. Among those 172 players, I had 98 players wish me luck, 7 that lied and shot me in the back, 47 that shot on sight, 17 nice ones that extracted together, 3 faked a team up and killed me at extract. Now, that already paints a pretty clear message in my mind. My brother on PlayStation 5 noticed from the start he gets shot a lot more when crossplay was turned off and a lot fewer friendly players. A lot less talking and a whole lot more shooting on sight. He felt he needed to shift his playstyle to be more silent and not trust anyone. For me on PC, it was the other way around. More talking, more short team-up moments, and more sharing or trading of loot. Crunching the numbers, it turns out the PC players seem to be way more relaxed, helpful, and friendlier than those on PlayStation 5. I know we don't have Xbox data or input from multiple friends, but I am never ever playing the game on crossplay against console players ever again. So, if we crunch those numbers in very broad terms, it works out to about just under 37% of the time you have a bad experience with console players. They will shoot you, betray you, trick you, lie to you, scam you, all that kind of stuff. And that same behavior only happens just under 6% of the time on PC with PC players. Now then, from my perspective, I've held this opinion for a very, very long time now. And it's funny because it is one of those us versus them mentalities. These days, if a game has multiplayer and it also has cross-platform play, so console players and PC players can, meet on the field of battle, as it were, a lot of games will have the option to, turn off cross-platform matchmaking, so you only play with your own platform's players. And you hear console players a lot, and I heard this a lot with the launch of Monster Hunter Wilds, because that is the first Monster Hunter game with this cross-platform crossplay finally. And there are a lot of posts I saw on places like Reddit of console players going, "Oh, I'm turning off crossplay. I don't want to play with PC players. They're cheaters. They all cheat and blah 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 blah." But on the other side of the fence, I have often been of the opinion that PC players who choose to turn that off and only play with PC players are having the better experience. Yeah, you do occasionally run into cheaters, even in PvE games like Monster Hunter, but it's just a tiny fraction. Out of the hundreds of hours I put into Wilds alone, the amount of cheaters, obvious cheaters, that they're just, made themselves way OP and just ruin the hunt for everybody else that joins them, is like 2. Not 2%, but 2. Twice. Frankly, I think it's jealousy on the console players' part, and they just imagine that everybody on PC is just crazy cheater or something. It's simply not true. Demonstrably not true, even. However, sticking with Monster Hunter as my sort of touch point here, and yes, I know we're drifting away from the PvP sort of side of things. We'll get back to it. When Monster Hunter Rise came out, it was a Nintendo Switch exclusive, and I played thousands of hours of it. And then it was so popular and was received so well, Capcom went, let's port it to the other systems so we can make more money from more people who don't happen to have Switches or don't want Switches for whatever reason. And I, in fact, wound up owning a copy of the game on every platform it was released for. I loved it so much. A couple of those I got codes for from the Capcom, from the community team, so I didn't actually, pay for multiple copies of it. I think I paid for it twice, and the other ones are codes. But what I found was, with the player base, it was really, really distinct. Like, the players on Switch, when you're multiplayering, at endgame level, the people you would meet tended to be, at the very least, confident, and very, very frequently high skill. So it was a fantastic multiplayer experience, especially when you're on, a very close skill level with the other players and you're all matching up perfectly and you're using the techniques properly and you're manipulating the monster. And it's just so much fun to sync up with players, even though there's no voice chat, no text chat, no nothing. You just, you're just mind melding with these people and just obliterating this crazy monster. It's so fun. And it was a very similar experience on PlayStation, because PlayStation is historically the OG home of Monster Hunter. Between Sony's consoles and Nintendo's consoles, the game has existed in both places, just bouncing back and forth. But then I played it on Xbox, and the quality of players I was matching with on Xbox were atrocious. And it was just one of the most stark contrasts between platform behaviors and skill levels I have ever experienced. So let's move across to Fallout 76 now, a game that does have optional PvP in it, but mostly everyone plays PvE because it's just much more fun that way. Except it seems there is a stark difference in how people play between PC and consoles. And there is no cross-platform play in this game, unfortunately. So the user base is split up, fractured, which is a mild frustration, because in a game like Fallout 76, you want the player base to be as big as possible, so the maps are always filled with people and whatever. But there is a massive difference in player behavior between console and PC when it comes to 76. And you don't even have to take my word for it. You can go to places like Reddit and you can look through the, slash Fallout 76 or whatever it is. And you see pretty much every single time you find someone complaining about griefers, all right? People nuking other people's camps, or just doing shitty PvP things, or, crappy exploits, or tricking players, or scamming players out of trades, and all the different kinds of shitty, crappy, bitchy, petty, pathetic, nasty, griefer type behavior you can possibly have in a game with the mechanics of 76. 99% of the people complaining about that stuff are console players in worlds with other console players, because again, there is no cross-platform multiplayer on this game. And yes, some of that behavior occasionally happens on PC, but again, I have, I don't know, probably about 800, 900, I haven't checked recently, many, many hundreds of hours of Fallout 76 under my belt. And I have never, literally never, been griefed by anybody. I've known a couple of people have been griefed, like they've had their camps nuked or something when there's been a bit of a dispute or something. And occasionally you'll hear a story about someone who organized an in-game trade for items and got scammed out of it or something. But the amount of stories you hear about that are fractional compared to how much bullshit goes on in the console side of things in that game. And it was when I started noticing that trend, I started to think about all the other experiences I've had in, isolated multiplayer, platform isolated multiplayer, and cross-platform multiplayer experience. And I went, you know what? That's been really consistent. The console players are always shittier players, like shittier people in a multiplayer environment. They're doing crappier stuff to other people. And the people who are choosing to do griefy kind of stuff deliberately try and deliberately plan to make someone else's gameplay experience worse for the lols or whatever. It's so massively frequently console players doing that. And in the discussion about this Arc Raider specific stuff, if you go to the Reddit post or whatever, you'll see people suggesting that with some sort of bias, PC player did the test. They're obviously just making up the numbers to make console players look bad because PC master race. Why? Why would he? Why would he bother doing that? But that's the pettiness of the console player's mindset. That's something they feel like they would do, so they project it onto other people's behavior, because they're stupid and immature and petty. But one of the prevailing arguments is also the demographics of it all. Console players tend to be children in their minds, much, much younger, because, well, children don't have as much disposable income or as much influence over, what gets purchased in the house. So they're playing on consoles, because it's not until you grow up and have your own money that you build your own PC and become a PC master race person. And of course, when you get older, you automatically get more mature and less shitty. That's not true. There are plenty of really shitty adults. Gestures of the world. But there is some truth to it, because if you look at clips, for example, where this shitty stuff is happening, in things like Arc Raiders, because it has a proximity voice chat and it tends to get used a lot in this game, certainly a lot more than some games I've personally played, you will often hear, well, the term is squeakers, you know, young, men whose voices are still in the process of cracking and dropping, just kind of being shitty because they think being shitty is funny. And there is a sound psychological underpinning to this as well, because there's a reason teenagers, and especially teenage boys, have the cliche, the reputation of being rebellious. What are you rebelling against? What do you got? Um, and that's because that's one way of trying to stamp out your own identity. You grow up a kid and you've got a personality, but the personal identity you have is so reflected from the environment around you, your friends, family, parents, and stuff. And when you start maturing, there's this sort of instinctual drive to stamp out an independent, fierce personality. And you mix that with a bit of testosterone, and you tend to get aggressive, shitty behavior. And part of that, testosterone surge is an urge to be the big dog, dominate, to be the alpha, or however you want to contextualize an urge to be aggressive and dominant. And you mix that sort of rumbling in the chest with a game that can reward aggression and attacking people and stealing their stuff, and you put them down and you take their stuff and you have more stuff. That means you have more worth, you are better, you are mightier, you are the big dog. So it does make some amount of sense that console players, who statistically are probably on the younger side, and you have a sort of little ladder of explanations about why their behavior tends to be shittier. But on the PC player side of things, aside from the likelihood of being older, more mature, more self-sufficient, and having a more solid grasp of one's own identity and attitude, and have settled down a little bit, frankly, there is also, within PC culture, a generally, not exclusively, but generally cooperative vibe as well, because PC players talk a lot about the games they're playing, how they're running on their system, what settings they're using, and they're sharing these little tips and ideas and whatnot to get the game to run better. And that is a cooperative, conversational kind of thing that happens, that creates a little bit. It's a bonding experience between PC players. It's a mutually beneficial community activity to talk about this sort of stuff and discuss things like, oh, what's the best graphics card for this, or how much memory should you have, and what settings are best for this game, and all of that kind of stuff. It creates a different community vibe that leans more towards cooperation and mutual benefit. So I feel like either deliberately or subconsciously, that feeds into how PC players tend to play multiplayer games as well, especially in PvPvE games, and even sometimes pure PvP games, where cooperation tends to be a more fun, more interesting, and even create more ideal outcomes. But I find the whole thing just really interesting, the subculture of gaming culture, and how it's split in various ways between uh, because there's always those little tribalistic things going on in gamerdom, because gaming is at large a competitive thing, so it tends to attract people who are like to engage in that competitive aspect. Although me personally, I've never been sort of hyper competitive, certainly not with other people, but a little bit of that plays in. But we've always had it, things like Sega versus Nintendo back in the day, the OG console wars. And of course, in more modern times, Xbox and PlayStation, and PC versus console, and PvE players and PvP players, and you know, there's all these little mini tribes that people love to have arguments about. Even AMD and Nvidia, or AMD and Intel, when it comes to that level of hardware. There's always that back and forth. I feel like that stuff has fallen off recently. It used to be far more aggressive, but these days it's just like, nobody tends to be that passionate about, Team Green or Team Red or Team Blue anymore, which frankly I think is a terrific thing, because one of the nasty little side effects of some of these tribal things is they tend to turn people into brand evangelists for these corporate entities that really don't give a shit about you. And in fact, well, there's a story I can't share because I promised I wouldn't share the details, but suffice to say, there is at least one brand out there, probably several, but I know for one for sure, who would deliberately send people in to start arguments about, their brand versus someone else's, when they knew they had some sort of advantage and they can get one over, just to try and get that spiritual win over the other team, and hopefully grab a few more new people into that little brand tribe, and create some artificial brand loyalty, and things like that. That's a technique certain brands, and again, I wish I could say which one, but I did promise I would love to be able to name names. You could probably guess who it is if you think a little bit about it, but it is something they do. They send these little sleeper agents, these little astroturfers into these communities to artificially start these fights in order to try and engender a stronger, tribal reaction and get that brand loyalty sort of inbuilt for no good reason. Sneaky little buggers. Anyway, we're drifting a fair way away from my central point at this stage. So I'm sure I don't have to ask, but I'm interested in hearing your perspectives about this as well. If you've got a specific game that you've noticed this kind of split in player behavior between consoles and PCs, I'd love to hear your little stories, your opinions on that. And if you've never thought about it before, over the next few days, when you're enjoying your favorite multiplayer, multi-platform game, keep an eye out for it. I think you might just be surprised at the pattern that emerges. But I think the real takeaway here is console players, be better. Grow up. Damn kids. Damn kids, and you're griefing. Anyway, that's the rant for today. And that will stand in for the standard vloggy content, because today I've got nothing useful to do or talk about, so we did this instead. I think this is an approach I might take going forward as I continue to try and hunt for a new place here in Ballarat. Wish me luck on that. Extra thank you to everyone who's been throwing support my way on this little living out of my van adventure, through the PayPal, through the Super Chats, and the Patreon, and each and every one of you who has bothered to do something as simple as just click that little button with the thumb on it, and also, and especially, leaving comments just to help with the machine mind of the tubes of you. So, until tomorrow's episode,